So in this video, we're going to look at why people pleasers are often doomed in their decision-making process. I'm going to be given some pretty strong examples about times where people have made decisions against their own better interests, which haven't ended up so well, and why it's really important that you examine your decision-making process and who it is that you're doing it for. And except for making decisions for your young children in your care, that by and large your decisions should be made from yourself and for yourself, and that will be for the highest interests of all concerned ultimately. So if you're curious about what I'm talking about, listen on. Hi, Clarissa Carmine Psychology, and I'm going to tell you why people pleasers in particular are doomed when it comes to making decisions. So if you are someone that knows that you need to please all the people all the time for many reasons, perhaps you grew up in a codependent household, you may have had to have made decisions before you were even ready or old enough to do so, or you could have been punished very badly for making the wrong decision. So you have this inbuilt fear of moving in the wrong direction, making the wrong decision that's kind of lurking within you all the time. Well, then you need to listen to this. So often people have come to me for counseling therapy because they can't make a decision. They're crippled between having to make a major life decision and their inability to do so. They're not hoping that I make their decision for them. They're wanting support from me. And this is a very important element when we are making major life decisions, is that we do want to know that we're doing the right thing. But sometimes there are people that can just make these decisions. They know what they have to do. And there are others that are absolutely bound by these decision-making processes. And usually I find that these are fairly empathic people who have got this desire to keep everybody happy. And it's really hard for me to tell them how doomed they are in this process. I mean, as I just said, we cannot please all of the people all the time. And most of the time, these aren't situations where they want to please all of the people. They just want to make one or two other people happy. Or they're actually not aware of who they're trying to please. So let's take two different situations. Now, the obvious one that comes to mind is people that come in wanting to leave a relationship, but they've got these restrictions. They want to go, but they don't want to either upset the partner, or if the partner is someone that's maybe upsettable, they don't want to upset somebody else, but they're not always aware of this. Now I'm going to jettison to just sort of flip this situation, and that is where I've known too many people. Most of them are women, because a lot of my close friends that I would have conversations with are women, or sometimes men, or sometimes they might have been clients, but a lot of people I know who have got married when they knew they shouldn't have. So everything might have seemed fabulous in the beginning. Perhaps they've been well love bombed, or things have been going fine. But at some point, right before or very soon after the wedding, their inner voice comes up, and the gut feeling is like, no, there's something not right here. You need to get out. You need to change your mind. But what invariably happens is that they don't. They override their gut instinct by all the good reasons why they should get married. And sometimes these reasons are good. You know, the person seems good, everything's fine on paper, everybody loves this person, there's something wrong with me, it's my imagination. The worst reasons are, well, we've paid for the wedding and all the guests are invited, how can I do this? So in the first instance, they're overriding their own instincts. But in the second instance, they're following through on the decision for other people. Okay, so the first person might be the partner that they don't want to upset, obviously. If this is a marriage or a partnership that should not be entered into, then there's a very good reason why they should upset that person rather than betraying themselves and not. But the worser case is where they actually go ahead with things because they don't want to upset other people, like the congregation, for example, or the parents-in-law or the parents who may have been paying for the wedding, or other people that are invested in this arrangement going ahead. So they're actually making a huge life decision based on somebody else's wants, wishes, and needs. And that is where that kind of people pleasing is clearly doomed, because invariably they realize some time into the marriage or the relationship exactly why their gut sense was looming up and waving a big red flag and saying, "Get out now." They realize that eventually, but now they're so entrenched in this relationship, houses, babies, marriage, that it's really hard to get out of. And so maybe they end up in my office going, "I need to make this really difficult decision." And the tragedy is I knew I never should have made this decision in the first place on retrospect, but I went ahead with it, and now here I am, and I need to make an even harder decision to get out. And the same thing can apply. I'm not going to leave because I don't want to upset somebody else. Now, sometimes, as I said, they're aware of this, and sometimes they're not. So let's look at how they may not be aware of it. Like, it's really kind of easier if they sort of say, "Well, I really want to leave this, but my whole family are going to be so disappointed, or their family is going to be so disappointed, or the kids are going to be so upset." Like, that's obvious. Now, setting aside the fear of being alone and never finding someone else, which is a whole nother topic, their desire is actually to exit the relationship, but they cannot make that decision because they are afraid of letting other people down. Now, as I mentioned, sometimes they know who these people are, friends, family, the partner, but sometimes they don't. Let's take that situation where you don't exactly know why it is that you can't make the decision, why you cannot just move forward into something that you know you need to do, and I will help you understand who it is that's sort of in your head, unbeknownst to you, that's blocking your ability to make your decision to do what you know you need to do. Sometimes what it is parents that aren't even present. Sometimes the parents are even dead. Sometimes they're there. Sometimes the parents might be sort of unaware of the situation. And it could be anything. It could be leaving a university course, leaving a job that, you know, the parents wanted you to be a doctor. You're in medical school. You're like, "I can't do this anymore. I really want to play an instrument and become a musician or a singer." So you know within yourself that your parents are not going to approve. We will continue to try and please our parents, particularly when we have never received adequate parental approval. There's this part of us, our inner child or even our inner adult, who wants to make mummy and daddy happy. There's this part inside you that wants to get that moment where dad comes to you and goes, "I'm proud of you." Or your mother comes and goes, "I love you no matter what." Not everybody got that from their parents. And even if you did to a degree, there is still a part of you that wants to be that good little girl and that good little boy that gets the proud dad and the caring, doting mom and has that feeling that you are a good, worthy person. And this is a prime driver of people pleasing. That the care and the love and the approval and the acceptance was very conditional or even withheld or absent when you were younger. And so there is this constant inner child driving you to gain that approval, but blocking you from being you. You cannot stand up on your own 2 feet when you've still got mommy and daddy in your head. When they're still there withholding that permission, you're always going to be second guessing yourself. It's like nobody backed you when you were younger, and so now you can't back yourself. So shining the light of awareness on this, if you are a chronic people pleaser, and if you get absolutely paralyzed by significant decisions that only you can make, then I want to tell you something. Please never, ever, ever make an important decision for yourself for another person. Always do what you want and need to do. Barring, of course, really hurting someone or if you've got children, but don't go and marry someone because you don't want to disappoint your dad who paid for the wedding. Don't. Don't go and even do something that you think another person might like or appreciate. I used to do this chronically. I've been a people pleaser, I probably still am. But I used to chronically try and work out what I thought other people wanted and needed and go and do it for them. I would constantly make decisions with someone else in mind. Oh, I want to do that, but how are they going to feel about that? Now, the other version of this is when you are in a relationship with someone who you are trying to please, who you cannot actually be authentic with and say, I actually only want to do this. You're trying to please them or make them happy because maybe they're a little bit withholding, maybe you're a little bit uncertain, maybe you're driven by the desire to be a good girl or a good little boy and get that loving approval that you never got. Maybe it's a friend, a friend or a social group. You're like, oh, maybe if I do this, they'll like it. I can remember doing the most extraordinary things for friends of mine. I remember making one time a teddy bear and I put it in clothes. I spent hours on it and I gave it to a friend of mine thinking this will make her happy. Isn't this the best thing? How devastated was I when I realized that a little while later she had taken that hand-stitched bear that I'd made for her and given it to somebody else. It was a big slap in the face. Right now, there's lots of little examples like that. There's lots of little examples where you've gone out of your way only to sort of almost get kicked in the shins for it. And that is because the natural law of the universe, as egotistical as it sounds, but it's not, and I'll explain why, is that we focus on our own growth and development first. We are not meant to be doing this in a way where we're climbing over people and hurting other people, but we're certainly not meant to be doing it also in a way where we are hurting ourselves and denying ourselves and pushing ourselves down. If a decision is difficult, something that you want to do but you don't want to do it because you don't want to upset another person, you are likely to be doomed in that. It sounds like a really bitter pill. It sounds like hard, tough medicine, like hard, tough love. It is the truth that your soul's growth is paramount because what you do for yourself does emanate out. But you kind of have to choose you first. Again, not in a situation where you are going to be damaging to other people. But it's a tricky thing, isn't it? Because you think, well, if I left my partner who's in love with me, would that not be hurtful and devastating? Well, yes, it would. But the suffering that you will both go through if you stay there is going to be worse. Depending on how much you're suffering, of course. These are big ticket items, I get it. They're big decisions to make. But let's take it with the example of staying in a course of study that you'll be paying money for, devoting your energy and attention to, that you are not invested in, you are not loving, you are not wanting, you are not doing it for you, you are doing it because your parents wanted it or because it looks good socially. Like, that is your life. Right? That is your life that you have to live. And if you're going to live your life for another person, that's okay. You get to choose that, but choose it wisely. Social expectation. So maybe you're not doing things to please a mummy and daddy in your head or a partner that you're not too sure what they want or a friend who's never going to really appreciate it. Maybe you're doing things because you believe it's socially expected of you. So that's another prime driver of people who make decisions to please other people is actually it's the people they're trying to please. They're trying to look good socially, right? They know there's this social expectation that they do X, Y, Z, so they do it. But it's not what they want to do. That's not their passion. That's not authentic or true to them. But they're not quite fully aware. You're not quite fully aware of what's driving you. Now, it's really tough going against the social grain, particularly in traditional cultures. And you do have to weigh up how much suffering you will endure if you're going against a traditional grain. But if it's just sort of this social rule that's out there, it's like, you should get married or you should have babies, right? Women are often expected to get married and have children. Still, imagine if they don't want that. I know a lot of women who haven't wanted babies and chose not to, but they have to answer this question all the time. But they've chosen something for them. So there's a lot of social expectations that we pick up through our conditioning that may not sit right with us and who we truly are. And so if you're operating from this, I'm not too sure why I cannot do this, then you might want to analyze, who is it in your head that is blocking you from doing what you want to do and being who you want to be? Who are you trying to please? Is it a mummy and a daddy? Is it a partner who doesn't quite vocalize what they actually do or don't want? Or are you trying to live up to their expectations that isn't serving you? Is there a middle ground that you can find? My trainer used to say to me, you can do anything you want as long as you can accept responsibility for the consequences. Now, that's a big statement, so I'm going to say it again. You can do anything you want as long as you're prepared to accept the consequences. Now, it's not what you think, in the sense of the consequences of making a decision for other people can often be worse than the consequences of making a decision for yourself. There are negative consequences that are possible in both areas, right? You make a decision for yourself, you're going to upset somebody, but that's part of their growth often also. The consequences of not making that decision and the assumption that this will make other people happy, the consequences there lie with you and your own blocked growth, your own suffering with that choice and decision. And the other aspect of making decisions under the assumption that it will make others happy is the element of wanting to look good. So there is a sort of an element of fragile pride in our choosing things that we think are going to make us look good, right? And in the end, we are the ones that end up betraying ourselves because other people may or may not care. Again, you're doing something for another person, not for you. Unless your only need is to look good and that's enough for you, then okay, that's great. But if you're doing things to show up, right, and look good for other people, and those other people aren't impressed, if your friend doesn't like the teddy bear that you stitched and made clothes for and gave to her, or doesn't appreciate it enough to value it and keep it for herself, then you've wasted a whole heap of time and energy, and you've given away part of your love in the wrong direction. So if you are making decisions thinking that your choice that might go against what you truly want, but you think it's going to be good for the other person, somehow you're going to save them from suffering. Okay, you're not going to leave your partner because you don't want to hurt them. Okay, you don't want to make them suffer. You feel that they will suffer forever if you leave them. Maybe this is true, maybe it's not. You're never going to know if you don't go. And I'm not suggesting that everybody here who's thinking about exiting a relationship should do it. That's not what I'm talking about. That's just an example. But there is something I want to say to people who believe that what they are doing that may go against what they truly want, but it is an act of benevolence for another. I want to say to you, what right do you have to take another's suffering from them? If you think you're doing this great act to save someone from being hurt, what right do you have to do that? Who are you to do that? Do you see what I'm saying? It's a kind of a big, tough, bit of a... But it is actually the truth. That statement has helped me and it's helped many people I know. It's an actual truth that we all suffer. We all suffer and we all struggle. And I don't know if I would want anyone to, for example, stay in a relationship with me because they didn't want to hurt me. Like if I knew that, I'd be like, oh, some people might appreciate that, but I'd be like, okay, so I'm a pity job, But it goes beyond that. It's the act that we have certain paths that we go on in our lives. There are certain things that we need to learn. And suffering is an essential part of human life. We can't avoid it. It happens sometime. So people may suffer when they stay together. You may suffer by being the one who thinks they're doing a great thing in the decision you're making for other people. And you could be, at the end of the day, completely wrong. You could be right. I don't know. These are tough decisions. But I want to just emphasize that the decision must be made from your center, from your point. You must be aware of who you're trying to please in your decision-making process. Because if you're trying to please another person, inevitably this can backfire on you. It can fail. So I feel like dropping the mic here because I feel like I've been talking very hard, but this is just one point of view. And again, I'm saying I'm not telling you to go and leave that relationship. I mean, if you've got children and a house, there's a whole lot more to consider. And just as a side note, I want to put a covenant around making decisions for our children is a very different thing. I've mentioned parents, I've mentioned partners, I've mentioned friends, I've mentioned society. But obviously, as a parent, if you're a parent, the decisions you make for your children are very different. They are in your care. Your role is to make good choices and decisions for them. So please don't think that I'm saying abandon all ye who make decisions for other people. No, if you're making decisions for your children, then that is 100% appropriate. Right? And they're still difficult decisions, but except for making decisions for your children when they are children, not when they are adults, then they can make their own decisions. And that's a valid point too. Then I encourage you to really dig deep and to work out who is this person or people that you are trying to please within yourself that is blocking you from making your own clear, committed decision. Where this can end you up. I mean, all choices that we make lead us to a certain point in our life, right? We can never go back and know what it would be like to have made another choice. But many people do look back in their lives and go, I had information somehow within me that was guiding me to not go in that direction, to change my mind, to not see through that commitment, that decision, that choice, and I ignored it because I wanted to make XYZ person happy. If you are in that early stage where you can make a different choice and there are still consequences that you need to accept, but not ones that are going to last with you for a long time in a lifetime, then this is food for thought for you. So I hope this finger waggy kind of intense conversation has landed okay with you. You know, I don't claim to be an absolute authority on everything and what you do. This has been my opinion and my thoughts on this topic. If you've got different ones or you agree with me in any way, feel free to drop it in the comment. That's fine. I'm happy to hear your feedback. If you liked it, like. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. And thanks for spending time with me during this video.